Good to see you both. We're actually recording live now, if that's okay with you. And I thought we could use this as a informal conversation, really, to get to know you both, to share with my wider audience via LinkedIn, other people we know about you both, about your businesses, and wanted to understand more about how you both are, how your business has been impacted during COVID, and what the opportunities are moving forward.
Sounds fantastic.
That's great.
Fantastic. So, Brad Van Leeuwen, did you want to go first and tell me more about you and about your business?
Sure. Where to start? So maybe I'll tell you what Kladara does, and maybe I'll tell you a little bit about how we came to found it. So what Kladara does is we help companies be successful users of their software. So I've helped build some tech companies before that have grown from nothing to hundreds of people. And what happens is every time you hire someone, they all want to bring in their favorite bit of software. So every marketing person's one subscription away from, conquering the marketing funnel, or, the finance team have different software products they like to use. That works great when you're 10 or 20 people, but before long it gets out of control. You've got no idea where your money's going, where all the money is going on software, what's the purpose of it, what you're actually paying for, who's using it. But also you've got no idea where your data's going, right? So you can't do a lot of the compliance that you need to do, like GDPR or financial regulation if you're a fintech. And myself and my co-founder, Christina, were looking for solutions for this, right? We're in a business together that grew to a couple of hundred people very quickly. And we needed a better way to manage it than the spreadsheet we were trying to use. And we were looking around, we spoke to other founders, we didn't find one, and so we decided to build it. So what Kladara is, you can think of it as the single source of truth for software in your business. So with Kladara, you can see all the software products that you have in the business on one screen. For everyone in the business, they can come there, they can see what's available. If they need something new, there's a really simple way of making a request, what you want, why you want it, what budget you're asking for, getting an approval, getting a virtual card to pay for that thing so you can check out yourself on the company website that you're buying from. And then it goes into the list for everyone else. And on the back of that, we orchestrate a lot of the administration that happens from SaaS, like finding the invoices, doing the reconciliation automatically, doing the bookkeeping automatically, as well as managing IT risk and helping companies document that. So that's what Kladara is today, where we've got customers in about 28 different countries. And that's companies, everyone from tech startups that in places like Newcastle to companies like Trivago, or actually even Havaianas, the company that makes flip-flops for the beach. They're a customer as well.
Fantastic. And so do you normally deal with CFOs or founders in terms of when you go and reach out to identify new customers?
So this is something we're learning a lot about, and it really depends on the type of the company. What we found is that for companies that haven't yet done anything to organize their software, it's finance teams and CFOs that have the most information. And of course, they want to close the books every month, and they need those invoices from everyone across the company to do it. And so in those types of companies, finance teams tend to be the people we speak to. But as companies get bigger, we often talk to other teams like IT teams, for example, or risk and compliance teams.
Okay, thank you for that. No, it's good to know. It's always good to know.
I was going to say I'm actually a user of Kladara as well.
I did pick that up with businesses in Newcastle, so that brings me nicely on. So Brad Channer, I feel I should use your full name simply so we can distinguish between the two of you.
Differentiate between the two. I just wanted to say one thing.
Tell me about you and your background and Roto.
Yeah, I was just about to jump in there though and say to Brad, not myself in the third person, but the other Brad. Another thing that I love about using Kladara, which is different to what he said there, is cash management. As a CFO, I get to use and protect myself from risk as a company, so I can give an expense card to a staff member and control how much money is on there at all times, and that it's only used to purchase the things that I want it to be purchased for. And yeah, that's one of the things I love about it. But anyway, myself, what did you ask? Say it again. Sorry.
So Brad, I've met a lot of CFOs in my lifetime, and every single one says they're not a typical accountant. But I think with you, that's especially true. So tell me more of your background. Did you go straight from school into accounting? What was your background?
Definitely not. No, I started this world slightly different. I actually started this world as a professional actor. So I worked on kids television for a little while, and then moved to the UK to work in the West End music. So yeah, very different background to most CFOs. But I found myself when working in music theatre, you know, I found myself struggling to pay the rent because the money is just, even when you get a gig, the money isn't really that good. So I decided to start my first company called Free Beer. I gave away a free beer every day around London. And then after that was a complete failure, which was the best thing that ever happened to me. I call it the scars. I got the scars from when it didn't work. And yeah, so then I moved from there, and then fell into advising and consulting, and then became a qualified accountant, and then fell into CFO land, and that's where I've been ever since. So yeah, very different background, but hey, the thing is, what I like about it is, you know, I've been there, done that, and got the postcards.
Exactly, and learn a lot from those scars, as you mentioned as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was an old guy once who said to me, if you haven't got the scars, you got nothing. And I think there's a huge amount of element of truth in that.
Yes, no, I think so. So Brad, tell me about Roto VR. What do you do?
Yeah, so Roto VR, we manufacture and sell through e-commerce and in retail, essentially chairs for virtual reality. So these are chairs where when you wear your headset, best way of describing it, if you're wearing your headset and you look to the left, the whole chair will move to the left with the same movement as your head. So these chairs spin 360 degrees, they rumble and vibrate based on reaction on what's happening in the software. And some of the best stuff is that it works with any piece of software out in the market as well. So it's not limited to only software we create. So we are essentially a hardware company, but the first sort of company ever to produce an interactive chair with virtual reality.
Amazing. And who do you sell to? Is it B2B or B2C, or a combination of the two?
Well, that's it. And you were talking about COVID before. So, you know, pre-COVID, we were a B2B business. 80% of our clients were people like arcades, which before I started at Roto, I didn't even think arcades were a thing still, but they are. And VR arcades are massively growing. So, but arcades, the governments, military, lots to military around the world, and universities. But 80% of our, 80% was B2B, and about a good 60% of that was to arcades. So COVID had a massive impact on our business.
Interesting. And I was going to ask you both, but I'll ask you if you brought it up. And so in terms of COVID, what impacts it had on your business then in terms of the way you go to market?
Well, that was the, I always say the thing of a good entrepreneur bounces. And, it was this, we hit a wall, B2B sales weren't coming in anymore. So we always had a dream or the goal as a company to launch a B2C company and to start selling to consumers. And the best thing is COVID sort of hurried that up. So we did as soon as I actually came on board, funny enough, so we created new strategies and models on how we'll work it, rebuilt our chair from the bottom up to change our cogs, and then launched a product for the B2C market, and which we've just launched and is going quite well.
Fantastic. Good to hear about that. And how about Kladara? How has business been impacted during the COVID situation?
So, we help companies in the cloud, right? So our journey's been kind of one of two chapters during COVID. When March last year, April, where all of a sudden companies were basically in panic mode. They were dealing with the thing that they'd always seen in the movies, right? It was the zombie apocalypse. They didn't know what was happening to their customers. They didn't know if capital was going to be available for them and what the impact on the world would be. So for us, there was a period of time, perhaps 4 to 8 weeks where the world shut down. So our prospects were not progressing down the funnel. We were not getting new business, and the customers that we had were looking to cut costs. So they were cutting, not us, but we could see, because they managed their software through us, they were cutting a lot of software, which affected our revenue, because that's a revenue driver for us. But then after the dust settled and everyone realized that there was not going to be a zombie apocalypse, but life would somehow go on, what happened to a lot of businesses that if they were already in the cloud and already using SaaS, they increased the usage of it. And those that hadn't thought about cloud software at all yet started thinking about, well, we can't use on-premise software when no one can go into the office. We need to move to the cloud. And so this brought us a whole new wave of customers and a wave of growth. It's really been very interesting for us, even among our traditional customers, which are technology companies. The amount of new software subscriptions they've brought in on average, and the diversity of software products they've brought in to run their business in this new world has just been mind-boggling. So on the whole, COVID's been a good driver for Kladara's business over the past year or so.
It is interesting, isn't it, how the challenge, the pain of COVID in so many different ways, and the tragic events have taken place. There has also been opportunity for businesses who have responded in the right way.
I always say that there is, good businesses find the positives out of negatives, and they're the ones who survive. So every negative has a positive. And like, for instance, with Roto, a negative, we lost the B2B market, but then the positive is there'll be a higher B2C uptake, and B2Bs who are looking to venture into virtual reality potentially to keep their offices connected. So there's a positive. And as long as you spin your business to be looking at those positives, you're on the right track. It's a bit like, restaurants. And I remember pre-COVID, we couldn't get a decent takeaway. Now, post-COVID, all the really nice restaurants do takeaways because they had to survive. So suddenly they're making, now that the restriction, I was speaking to a friend of mine who owns a Michelin restaurant in Cardiff, and now he's making a roaring trade on takeaway, and now making a trade again doing dining in. So, he's now got double the revenue stream than what he did pre-COVID because he took advantage of a situation.
That's amazing. It goes back to that bounceability. I'm not sure if bounceability is even a word, but the ability to bounce back in challenging times. At Finitas, where I am, I was hired to join Finitas to set up their finance function during lockdown. So I actually relocated to the UK from Hong Kong, set up this new division within a business that during lockdown over the last year we doubled in size, and the group were owned by us massively recruited new people to take advantage and win new markets. And so our ability to find senior finance people and other key people for finance businesses across the UK has massively improved despite the challenging market conditions. And it comes down to that bounceability, doesn't it?
Indeed, yeah.
So in terms of opportunities moving forward, how do you see things changing? Clearly on Monday, I think some people quite unfortunately call it Freedom Day, don't they? But the lifting of restrictions starting Monday. How do you think that's going to impact your business?
Oh, personally, I don't see it having much impact at all, to be honest. For us, we have just launched a new shopping center strategy to the company, like an arcade model, where we've launched our first arcade that we're running ourselves in Westfield or White City. However, I honestly don't see in the short term or in the long term, that this is going to boost numbers of traffic in shopping centers. I think, I personally think, while everyone thinks it's great and this so-called Freedom Day, I don't think it's going to change anything. I think the actual general public are going to be just as weary of doing things in large crowds as before, except for the big events or for younger people going out to nightclubs and bars and hospitality. So yeah, I really don't think it's going to have much difference on us at all, because all the arcades have opened up again now. So, people are already opening their businesses. So
Yes.
From our
Do
side,
you see, sorry, you were saying.
sorry about that. So from our side, I think it's, this Freedom Day is just marketing from politicians who want to do well in opinion polls. I think when you think of business, what do you care about? Or at least if you're an online business, you care about two things. You care about like how easily you can move about, right? So we have people in London and Barcelona, and it's very hard to get them to be in one place because things are not free. There are still crazy controls at borders that make it impractical and very costly for people to travel. And, that combined with a moment where it's actually really hard to hire people in London because the talent pool's gone right down. So a lot of people have left the UK, and after Brexit as well, a whole class of people have left. They don't have a means of coming back. And even if they wanted to, if you've got your vaccine from France or Germany or somewhere, it doesn't matter. The UK won't recognize it. So there's a lot of things there that mean it's kind of like it's Little Britain Freedom Day, unfortunately, rather than an actual Freedom Day.
I'll second what you say there, Brad. I mean, if they could put as much effort in this political grandstanding message into doing more to open the ports up again and to actually clear the shipping backlog. I mean, because we do products, don't we? So because we're not a software company, we actually manufacture things. So the shipping is ridiculous. And it's a mixture of Brexit and COVID, but it's not the real reason. It's just greedy shipping companies. I mean, the shipping rates to send something at the moment from China to the UK, we're paying 3 times more than what we paid pre-COVID. And I've been talking to some people involved in the shipping industry, and quite a lot of it actually is to do with the large companies just charging more, not because, and the holds up at the port is to do with Brexit and extra customs checks for things going through Europe. So yeah, there is, I think if anything, if they could spend half their energy on the so-called Freedom Day on getting those things sorted, I think a lot of businesses in the UK would be a lot more comfortable. That would be something to celebrate.
Yes, I think so. So do you think that maybe COVID has been used as an excuse by a lot of businesses to maybe increase prices and change level of service offering?
I use the same excuse that I've the same story I think I've said once before, a couple of times before, but it's like when there's a great app I've started using called SeatFrog. I don't know, I'm sure you've heard of it. You pay for it. What was that, Brad?
Another Kladara customer, I've got to say.
Oh, really?
We love SeatFrog. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, really?
There you go. Everyone's your customer. I love it. Well, SeatFrog is great. So you essentially, just to give them a plug, you can, once you have a train ticket, you can bid for an upgrade to first class. So you can get some from £8 or you can pay up to £40 for a first class ticket. And I've started doing this. Why not? And I'm based out in Newcastle to come into London. So £8 for an upgrade, whatever. And you're sitting on the train. Anyway, I love it. They come around with their bags of crisps. And I said to the guy the other day, what flavor crisps you got? And he goes, oh, just salt. I said, oh, okay. Do you ever have any other flavors? And he said, oh, no, COVID. My other favorite was actually on the same trip, and there was another person, and they said, oh, so you can have a cup of tea, and they said, oh, hot water machine's not working. Oh, okay. Is it, do you know why? And they said, oh, COVID. And I don't know if he was being serious or not, but there's an element of, it's a wonderful excuse just to use COVID as a good excuse. B&Q, I remember, not B&Q, Halfords. When Halfords first started, there were, when lockdown first started, I was at Halfords trying to buy something, and customers were lined up around the corner, and people were driving up to the car park, seeing the lines, and then getting back in their cars and driving away. Mm-hmm. And I took a photo of this and a bit of video. And if you looked at the front, they had 6 staff, and they had 1 staff serving customers and 5 staff behind them grabbing orders. So instead of being efficient and having 2 or 3 staff serving customers and then 2 or 3 staff grabbing the orders from the shop, so they did it really inefficiently with 1 person at the front. And they then started, you get this big hoo-ha, oh, COVID, they've dropped sales, we need support, we need this and that and that. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, hang on, you had customers. What you need is to actually have some better management and find a way to serve more customers quicker so they don't go away. So there's an element of oh yes, it's COVID's fault, this isn't working, or it's COVID's fault, that is. And I'm sure that there's a big element with a lot of businesses that is true. However, I think there's also an excuse feature where people don't want to change what they know or change what they do to adapt to those new ways. Went to a cafe the other day, a restaurant, and there were 6 empty tables out the front. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, we're booked for lunch. And I said, well, it's 10 o'clock. We just want a cup of tea. And they said, oh, well, we booked the table at 12. And I'm like, yes, but I just want a cup of tea. That's going to take 20, 30 minutes. I'll be out by 12. Oh, no, we can't double seat because of COVID. It's like, so, yeah, there's an element where I think some businesses can use it as a good excuse to be lazy. And I think there's some elements where there's a real truth that COVID is a major issue. So that's my sixpence anyway.
And it's quite a contrast to other businesses that decide to work twice as hard or be more inventive to bounce back and to react to it and find ways of moving forward.
Be smarter. Not
Exactly.
necessarily working harder, but working smarter. Look at the environment, see what's changed, and how do you capitalize on that? And you know, making sure you protect yourself from a risk background, that you're not too, you know, vulnerable in terms of the negative impacts of what's happened. But just, yeah, don't just sit there and throw your hands up and say, oh, I can't do it anymore. Find a way around it. I had a great story of a friend of mine, Dave, he used to be an Uber driver, and we were having a chat. Actually, it was last night, and his business has skyrocketed post-COVID, and he took the time during COVID, again, because he could either sit there and complain that there was no Uber fares, which he didn't. He then bounced and started getting contracts with the hospitals, ferrying patients back and forth, because he had went and got his carriage license. And then, because there was so much work and nobody wanted to do it, he then hired several more drivers to work with him and starts getting them jobs. And suddenly he's making more money than he's ever made before, doing an industry that has suffered throughout COVID. But because he was smart the way he thought about it, and he picked up on something that no one else wanted to do. So anyway, I don't know how I got there. I digress.
So all 3 of us have set up business before. I set up my own business previously, and you're both entrepreneurs. Tell me, I'd be keen to know from you, how important is it to find the right staff to scale up a startup? When you're setting up a new business, what's most important to you when you need to identify those first 10 people, and then the rest of the people you need for your business? How about either of you two, Brad? How would you like to share more about that in terms of how you identify the right people for your businesses?
Shall I jump in then? I think, you know, it's absolutely the case that people are everything in business, particularly for technology companies, where, you know, the way you do things is you interact with one another, and the difference between good and great in that environment is not a step, it's exponential. And so at Kladara, you know, we take a lot of time really to decide who to bring in. And we've found that whilst in the short term, that can be frustrating, right? Because it's slowing your growth. You're tempted to say, okay, that person in the interview, they were okay, I think I can kind of work with them, but they're not a great culture fit, or, you know, they're good, not great. You could bring them in, but unfortunately, the problem with that is that you make that sacrifice or that concession once, it becomes easier to do it again. And before long, you end up with a team that's good, not great. And if you're growing fast like we are, good, not great is a problem, because you're not just hiring the person, you're hiring the person and all the people that they're going to hire themselves in the future. Yeah. And so we've been very thoughtful about who we bring in. And between myself and my co-founder, Christina, we make a point that no matter what the role, one of us, or sometimes both of us, interview everyone before they come in. And so there will not be anyone hired into Kladara for the first several hundred people that myself and my co-founder haven't, you know, had the opportunity to meet from a culture standpoint, check that they're a great fit, they share our values, and only then can they come in. So in the past, we've even said no to great people just because we don't think they're a fit.
Interesting. I was going to ask you actually, in addition to skills and experience and what's on their actual CV, I hate to admit this, but I've been a recruiter for 20 years. I hate CVs and think they're a necessary evil to some extent. We need to send them out, but they don't really tell you who a person is. I'd like to ask both of you really, in terms of that, in terms of scaling a startup, identifying those people, what makes you identify the great people and the great fit rather than the good people who don't fit? Because you're not going to find that on a CV necessarily, are you?
You've got to put the work in. You've got to, the CV tells you, who is going to get into that first call, right? That first interview. Yeah. And that's how you cut. And I think one thing that I've learned over, that we've implemented now at Kladara, which I hadn't done previously, is actually a very simple rule, right? We try to hire people that have done their job before at a company like us, at our stage, and the next one beyond. In the past, we've not done that because, you like to think that someone that's smart, is energetic, enthusiastic, can kind of learn the job. And that's true, they can, but in an environment where you're growing quickly, you just don't have time for people to learn how to make a wheel. If they've already got the wheel, then they know how to make it better and they can bring that playbook with you. And like this, we've been able to, it's actually helped us grow a lot faster. And then I think beyond that, interviewing's hard. And I think, I know Brad, he had a bit of a sales background, me too. And one thing I know to be true about salespeople is we're very easily sold. So
yes.
So through those interview processes, it can be really tough to try to figure out who's great rather than good. But it's about, for us, there's two things. One is having like a systematic approach. So we have some key questions that we're going to ask people that will test for the values and traits that we think make great people. And the other thing that we're very strong on is referencing. So we'll always ask for references and they're great, but actually the references I'm more interested in are the ones that we get to that they don't know about. And this is great. If you're only hiring people that have done their job before, you're hiring people that have worked at other tech companies. And turns out tech companies are quite a close-knit community. So you're probably only ever one person away from someone that can give a backdoor, like a reference unnotified.
Nice. I mean, I was second everything Brad said, and yeah, I think one of the things that I learned early days the hard way, especially when it comes to things like interviewing, is being prepared and preparation, having those questions ready that you want to ask. In my early days, I think I was a bit more freewheel it, and then when you're passionate about your business and you're really into it, it's very easy to give the answers to the peer person you are interviewing that you want back, and you don't do it on purpose. You can do it very subconsciously, and if they're a decent salesperson, they will pick that up and then throw it right back at you, picking up what you said. And I've been guilty of that before in the past. So now I'm very prepared with the answers that the questions are going to ask, and also do it in a much more, I suppose, formal kind of context. But I agree with Brad. People are so important, and I have seen it myself for countless startups that I've worked for. It's so important to make sure those are the right people. And I remember one CEO I worked for once said something that his team, it was years ago this, but his team wasn't the Premier League; they were Division 1, but he needed the Premier League. And just touching on what Brad just said, then that is the problem. He got into that rut of just hiring not the best people for the business and the best he could get, but the ones that could do. He just hired people that could do the job. And that just wasn't good enough to get that company to that next level of scaling fast. And I think hiring and staffing is literally the number one thing when starting a company up. If you want to do some fast growth, it's having those right people at the table.
It is, and I think it's very interesting to say about culture too, because I think a lot of organisations recruit people to fit in with the culture instead of necessarily taking a step back and thinking, what culture would I like our business to have? And it may not be the culture you have at the moment. So you could be looking to bring new people in to transform that culture and get them from Division 1 to the Premier League. So I think that is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, and in addition to culture, like you want a diverse workplace, and you want people from not just like maybe different color skin or different gender, but you also want fundamentally different backgrounds, right? That you can bring different ideas to things. And that can be hard to do and have a cohesive culture at the same time. And so what we interview for, I express it as culture that we're aiming for, but the culture is the result. What we interview for is values, because we think that you might have a different background, you might have a different way of doing things, you might have different contexts that you bring, but if we all share the same values, then we're fundamentally going to be able to work together. So you can have a very diverse team, but the pillars of values that underpin or are innate in the people that we bring in are hopefully, if we do a good job, as similar as possible.
Thank you. What values in particular do you look for at Kladara?
Well, so there's a few very fundamental ones. So the number one we look at is respect. And I know it's easy to say, of course you want people to be respectful, but respect is something that permeates every interaction that you have. It comes down to, how do you talk to your prospects and your customers? How do you talk about them when they're not there? And perhaps you're a little bit frustrated. How do you show up on time? Are you timely? Are you prepared for the things that the meetings that you come to? These are all manifestations of respect. And that's a core value that we have. And we have 5, but another one that I think is particularly important is around curiosity. So Kladara is not a better way of doing things. It's better and different, right? So we're not building like a shinier, prettier, cheaper, faster, better version of something that already exists. We're building something that doesn't exist yet or before us from first principles. And the way we get there is that we listen to each other, but we more importantly listen to our customers. And our customers tell us what problems they have. And if in all our interactions with them, we're curious, we ask them, okay, if they tell us, like, wouldn't it be great if Kladara did this X thing? Now, if we could take that back, the person on that call could take that back to the product and engineering team, and they could say, hey, Kladara needs to do this, and we're going to be awesome. But actually, we've missed an opportunity there, because if we can find out what's underneath, why that's important, what's the person trying to achieve, and what's the impact for them, then when we talk to other customers that also tell us, wouldn't it be great if Kladara did X, right? They may have different solutions, but when you get through the whys and what they're trying to achieve, it may be the same thing. And then if you can figure out those patterns, you can end up with a really powerful, cohesive, easy to use product. But you only get there by being curious and being brave enough to ask questions.
And just quickly, I also add to that, you also get a wonderful sales pitch as well. Because the thing is, if you're talking to your target market and the right people, they use specific language to sell. Because I remember years ago, as Brad was saying, I have a sales background, and I remember years ago, funny enough, irony, selling CFOs into CFOs. And I remember one time I would talk to them, and then I would find out their pain points about, this service that we offered. And then somebody would use a word like, oh, it was integrating mergers and acquisitions. And then every time I got on a phone call with the CFO after, I'll be all about, when you're trying to integrate mergers and acquisitions. So I'll be like pinching their language, but pinching what problems that we were solving, which I had no idea of what problems we were solving until they actually told me. But it became a wonderful sales pitch. But yeah, no, it's knowing your customer. We've had the same sort of thing at Roto, where especially going from a B2C chair instead of a B2B chair, our original chair was 65 kilos. You couldn't move it once it was erected, and it sat in someone's living room. So if you're an arcade, that's absolutely perfect. But for a consumer, what do they actually want? So we ended up getting a big focus group together of people, not just loyal fans, but customers and people who are interested in buying chairs from different countries, and asking them and spending the time with them to say, well, what do you want? What features do you want? So you want it to go up and down. So you want it to spin around. You want it to vibrate. Oh, do you want it to go side to side? Oh, okay. Why? Why do you want it to do that? Oh, because of this type of game. Okay, cool. We never thought of that. So, you know, it's yeah, again, take what Brad said, but it's the whole why, the power of why do you actually want to do that? And then finding that information out, you can make educated decisions with evidence on why you need to change the product. In our case, change our product and redesign our product, and that investment. It's really important.
Thank you. And it goes back to that curiosity that Brad was talking about in terms of the key value as well. It was interesting talking about sales, because I think that when interviewing somebody to join your company, or in my case, interviewing somebody to join one of my clients' companies, I think there's always a very important balance to be gained. I think that interviewing somebody and realizing after maybe 15, 20 minutes they're not the right person for your business is actually time well spent sometimes. And I think sometimes many people realize when you're interviewing somebody for your business, the whole of that interview, you're marketing, you're selling your company to them, you're representing your company. And that's so important. And I think that not enough people know about that. I think too many people also sell their business so much, they don't allow people to make the right decision. And one thing I always try to do when I'm representing another organization is to understand why somebody may not want to work there, or why they may not fit in, so that I don't introduce somebody who later on isn't going to work out. And I think it's a combination of representing your business as well as we can in every situation, especially during that interview, but also allowing somebody to realize it may not be right for them. And I think it's a combination of that listening and conveying that information.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the dangerous part where you go, there's an even line, because at the end of the day, as a recruiter, you are not a part of that team or that company. So for guessing ahead that somebody is not going to get on with the CEO, or someone is not going to fit in with the culture fit when you're not actually a part of that culture, is a potential dangerous game. And that's where I think, this is no disrespect to recruiters, of course, but I do feel recruiters sometimes do let themselves down. I've had it before in the past where someone says, oh yes, we just don't think you'll get on with the CEO. And I turn around
Really?
and say to them, I'm sorry, are you the CEO? No, are you like, you know, a voice and a shoulder? Then who the fuck are you? You don't even work for the company. How do you know I'm not going to get on with him? Furthermore, I was quite insulted because I can get on with a bloody wall with drying paint. I mean, you know, I talk to anything. I think Brad would back that one up. But yeah, it's you know, it's but that's one of the things, is that there's that even line where, yes, in one part, being able to not put forward the wrong candidates definitely is important, but on the other hand, where's the line to saying, actually, I'm trying to guess what the company culture is or what the company's values are, but I actually have had a 10-minute conversation with the CEO and that's it. So it's that even line between the two.
I think somebody due to personality fit is quite dangerous. I'm quite surprised Truth said that to you. So that does seem slightly odd.
He was a 20-year-old kid. What were you going to say, Brad? Sorry.
I was just going to say that, you know, making sure, like, getting this balance right between selling to the candidate and to making them aware of the reality of what they're coming into and what's expected of them is really important. So in our case, you know, you have to sell to candidates. The candidates are more important than the company, right? Yeah. They're the absolute most important entity in that conversation, right? Between the candidate, the hiring manager, and the hiring company. And so you need to, if you're really looking to hire a superstar, you've got to tell them, like, why should they spend the only finite resource they really have being their time with you rather than all the other places they could be spending it, right? So you do need to sell to the candidate, but you also need to be very clear around what the role means and what's required, and how that works, so that you can bottom out if they are a fit or not, and they are prepared to operate in that kind of environment that they'll be coming into. I mean, as an example, we're a startup, we're venture backed, right? Which means though we're growing fast, we are at the moment still loss making, right? So we're dependent on future capital coming from investors. And depending on a person's situation, that may or may not be a comfortable thing, right? You could be brilliant, but imagine, you're a young person with, you've just given birth to twins and you've got a big mortgage and all these things, where being upfront about what it is to be a venture-backed startup with perhaps a candidate that isn't familiar with the dynamics of it is really important, because that means that if they're aware of it and they come to you, they're buying in. They know all the things they need to know and they can be fully committed. The downside is if you don't tell them, they come in and it could be the venture-backed thing. It could be that, hell, there's a lot of work to do, right? Or whatever that thing is. If they come in and find that it's different to what they're expecting, they may be great, but they just may not be great for you, because they may be distracted, they may not be comfortable, and it may not be the environment that they can be their best selves. So helping them come to that view and kind of opt in and in an informed way is really important.
Thank you.
And it's really funny when talking to other CFOs who don't work for venture-backed companies, who work for publicly listed companies or companies where they never have to worry about cash and cash flow and the next investment round. They are very different beasts. As I said, I've got a mate who's a CFO of a listed company, and his worries and his day-to-day work is very different to where my day-to-day work and my focus, our core focus. We can both do each other's jobs, but the core focus and the stress that you're under in a venture-backed company to always be pushing and hitting your targets and hitting your goals and working with the investors and looking at that next fundraising round and making sure the cash is spent responsibly and it's all going towards your ultimate strategy. It's amazing. It's a skill. And some people who are fantastic CFOs who haven't worked in that environment can completely freak out at the stress of going, oh my God, there's only X amount of money left in the bank account, when really that's normal. We just got to fundraise and we got to do A, B, and C. We're doing it for 6 months, but it's a different mentality. Company that doesn't have 50 million in reserves.
But this is why finding the right person is important, because there's nothing more exhilarating than realizing that, hey, you've just, for example, contributed to landing this new business, and because you're a startup, what that business means for the KPIs. Like, you can see the step change from one day to the next. That's really invigorating. And I think obviously venture-backed startups tend to be loss-making and dependent on future capital, but right, the opportunity to be fundamentally involved in the creation of something starting at nothing for a certain type of person is the most exciting thing that they can do professionally. And it's the thing that helps accelerate their career the most, because to be part of in a business that, like for us, for example, last year our revenues grew about 25x. So far this year, we're up about 10x from where we finished last year, right? So you can imagine what that means as say, for example, a young professional joining. If they joined 4 months ago, the reality of the business today compared to 4 months ago, it's a completely different business, right? People that had a task that they did once a day, suddenly that's a whole person. And very soon will be a whole team. And that creation and that growth gives them opportunities. And if you're a part of a business that's going through that and you're the right type of person, the fact that you're venture back actually doesn't matter. That's just a tool that you have in order to help you succeed, and it's part of the puzzle.
It's a sense of ownership as well. I get
Totally.
That person has built that thing, and it becomes an emotional connection to them that they want to, if it's the right person, they want to get out of bed and go to work every day because they are proud of that task and that thing that they have built. And then when it goes into a team doing that one task, there's a huge sense of pride that I think is even more powerful than a wage.
Yes, and that sense of ownership beyond equity in the business, that sense of ownership and that pride in building something together with other people can make a massive impact, can't it? And getting the right people on board who are able to want to be part of that and want to be part of that growth story is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's, startups are a contact sport, right? You're not going
Like
to sit at you're not going to sit at a desk every day, and if you have like a lazy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it doesn't matter because maybe your boss is away or something. It's not like everything you do or don't do has an impact that can be seen in the numbers, and because you're growing so fast, that compounds so fast. And so you need people that want to be that in that environment. But the flip side of that is they have to be prepared to put effort in and perform. So it also is a fit for a certain type of person in that way.
Yeah.
One question I wanted to ask you both, it wasn't one of the questions we discussed beforehand. What's been the best unexpected hire? Have you ever hired somebody with maybe an unusual background that you then found that you took on board, took maybe a risk on them, and then found them really adding value to your business, whether in your current business or previous business you worked in?
So for me, now we at Kladara, we at the moment at the stage we're at, things are moving fast and we're still small, so we don't have a lot of bandwidth to bring someone in to train them. We're hiring people that have done their job before.
Of course.
But in one of my previous companies, I hired somebody to run a team of sales development reps, so top of funnel, outbound people. So this hire was to run a small but growing team at this previous company. And I interviewed this lady. I interviewed her because she'd previously been a lawyer and at an insurance company in Morocco. And she'd actually come to the UK as a refugee, right? So she'd come to the UK as a refugee. She'd been through a very horrific, traumatic experience as a refugee in the UK, and had come out the other side and had the right to work. And I interviewed her, and she was clearly extremely smart, very good at the things she knew, and knew nothing about sales or running sales teams. And she clearly had some scars, to go to Brad's earlier comment. She had some scars from this refugee process. So during the interview, she started crying. For no particular reason, it just happened. I think the emotions of being given the opportunity to interview because no one else was interviewing her. There was just too much for her. But I sensed something, there was a spark. And so we offered her the role. And I said to her, look, this is yours to lose, right? You've not done this before. We'll help you try to figure it out. If it doesn't work out, we'll have to let you go because that's just the way things work. We're going to give you every possible chance to make it work. I can tell you that for the first 2 years I worked with her, every time I met with her, she also cried.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously extraordinarily traumatic, but she was fabulous, right? We grew that team to more than 40 people. It started with just a couple when she joined, and she did such a good job, and she was a fabulous surprise hire. So, I always, actually, even though we do hire people that have done their job before, one rule I have in shortlisting candidates now is I always try to shortlist a wild card. So someone that's got something about them where I'll throw them into the mix. Maybe we don't hire them, but we'll give them a shot during the interview process to see if maybe we're wrong.
I like that. What do you think it was about, there's something about them that made that difference, that particular lady? What do you think she had that gave her that edge to make her be so successful?
She was just such a mentally strong individual. She'd overcome adversity like the three of us would probably never know. She came out the other side and was ready to fight again, right? So, and she wasn't being given opportunities. When she got one, she really took it with both hands and made the best of it she possibly could, and put so much of herself into that she did just a fabulous job.
That's really good to hear. It's that resilience and mental toughness following the adversity you've been through.
Totally.
How about you, Brad? Have you ever hired somebody of quite an unusual background and found them to perform very well?
I was busy here trying to think. Not yes and no. I mean, not nowhere near as good a story as Brad's. But I have had people I've hired in finance teams. I have especially when it comes to people like bookkeepers or lower level finance, junior accountants, etc. I would much prefer to hire someone who hasn't had experience but wants to learn, but knows what they're doing, if that makes sense. So there was one girl that I hired a while ago who knew how to use Xero and everything else, but she hadn't really got going with her career, and I took her in a more senior role. But I did that deliberately because I wanted her. I find it really much easier to teach somebody how to do things the way that I want it done, or the way that I think it should be done, rather than doing bad habits. So, from a financial point of view, now looking at a finance team, for example, I much prefer to be able to the way that if you're not a practice accountant and you're actually a management accountant or accountant in a company, the way that you want your reports are quite different. It's a different way of reporting and a different way of bookkeeping, of managing the accounts, etc. So I would want something very quite simple, put into a certain nominal account or a nominal code, or something to be updated at a regular basis. And you find that it's very difficult if someone comes from a different type of background for them to think like that, and they think more about what a textbook would say rather than what would happen in the real world. So I much prefer. There was a girl called Jessie once that I took on with limited experience, but it was the best move I ever did, and it was everything I wanted in a bookkeeper. She was 45 years old. She had 2 children. She was absolutely hard as brass and would not put up with any shit. And it was just what I wanted, because this was a company full of very arrogant, and not arrogant, but very, very self-assured salesmen, and a very masculine, a very male-dominated team that needed to do, that she needed to be able to say, no, do it the way I told you to do it, and to stand up to the CEO, who was also the entrepreneur. And she did a brilliant job of doing that. And, for her, I hired off her personality, but the fact that she could change things and do things that teach her the way that I wanted them done, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
But no one knew as good as stories of Brad's. That was a.
But it does show, doesn't it? Sometimes you can, as you say, you do when you're setting up business at the beginning, you need someone who's done what you're doing and done it before and proven themselves to do that. But sometimes when the organisation gets bigger, you can occasionally interview a wild card and see how they do. I've interviewed. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say, just on what you said. Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, I like to interview. I like to also interview and talk with other entrepreneurs or people who have run businesses previously. There's a dangerous line between ones who are just seeing something through before trying to start another business, and a lot of people are scared of those people. But I think Brad touched on it before. Working in a startup or working in a venture-backed business, there is a part of this where it is quite entrepreneurial, and you do need to know what you're doing, but you also can't rely on somebody like a boss sitting there over your shoulder. You need to get on and do your job. And having someone who's had to get on and do the job to make it work, I think, is quite an invaluable thing that is sometimes overlooked. Anyway, so what were you saying? I interrupted you.
No, that's absolutely fine. No, I often like hiring people who are not recruiters to work as recruiters and be trained properly, rather than hire someone who's been trained in a particularly bad way or been trained to send 50 CVs for every job. It doesn't really have the right background or ethics in doing that. So I've hired people for very diverse backgrounds and have found them to be quite successful sometimes if they've got the right values, going back to what Brad said earlier. Taking a step back and looking at your businesses moving forward, how do you both feel that cryptocurrencies might impact your business in the future? Do you think those are going to be something that could change your business? And will they bring any particular risks or benefits, either to your business or to business generally, do you think?
Personally, yeah, I don't know. I mean, personally, with our business, I think the big thing for me is going to come down to the risk reward part of cryptocurrency, and Brad might be a better person to talk about it on that on the fintech side. But I mean, personally, I feel that the cryptocurrency market is a bit of a cowboy still, and I think the fact that it's unregulated to me sparks fear in me as a CFO, especially accepting payments in something that is unregulated or something that can easily be high, I would see as very high risk, and also whose value can change at such a dramatic rate. And then what are you basing that value on? And then there's all bunch of stuff that I think would need to be sorted out. But if it is sorted out, it'll probably take away the magic, which is a cryptocurrency. So where's the middle line? But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Brad? You're the fintecher.
I think without getting into the weeds and discussing the merits or otherwise of specific cryptocurrencies and what makes them, I think, interesting or not. I think for our business, so we're fintech, right? So we're a software product that helps companies manage their software, but embedded in it is a way to pay for that software as one of the key steps of that journey, which means that we're a financial services product as well and regulated. Now, if you're a crypto business, getting access to financial services can be difficult because of all the things that Brad Jana said. So a lot of financial institutions haven't thought through or haven't considered how to provide financial services to cryptocurrency businesses, and therefore they can be functionally excluded. I think the advantage or the opportunity for businesses in modern financial services like Kladara is to be more thoughtful and nuanced in our approach to risk management and compliance in a way that allows us, for example, to provide our product to businesses involved in cryptocurrencies, whereas other financial products may not be able to. So at Kladara, about 3 months ago, we finished a very big project that enabled us to have a more nuanced, thoughtful, and detailed approach to managing risk arising from cryptocurrency businesses. Wow. And so therefore, actually, if you're a crypto business, you can become a customer of Kladara, because a lot of businesses involved in cryptocurrencies or NFTs, they're actually technology companies underneath, and they use a lot of technology, and they definitely need a product like Kladara. And so I think the opportunity there is for new businesses to think about these new problems in more nuanced ways than perhaps maybe like a Barclays would, for example.
Thank you for that. No, it's certainly interesting to see how that's going to have an impact. It's really good you can work with those businesses now. Thank you both for your time. Really appreciate it. It's been good to know more about your business, more about your approach, and more about how you look to scale and hire new people. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with people watching this?
The silence. No, I mean, it's I think, summarizing what we talked about today, I mean, as I think the biggest things that I've taken out of this, from listening to myself and the other Brad and yourself talk, the importance of staff and having the right staff and the right team around us, how incredible and hard that is to find, and important it is to bring on to a business that you want to scale. And then I think the impact of COVID, again, the impact is what you make it, and in a nice way. And yes, it's impact economies, et cetera, but let's all find the positive out of the negative. And not saying let's not acknowledge the negative, but let's find the positive out of the negative as well.
And on my side, look, I'd be remiss to say that if you're listening to this or watching this and you're in a business that uses software and it's not managed super well, then you really should go to Kladara.com and learn how to do it better.
By the way, I love the way you got the right way around as well.
That sounds good. It needs practicing, doesn't it? I once put my company logo behind me when doing a Zoom call, and everyone speaking to me was laughing during the conversation, which I thought was quite unusual. It's usually pictures of Arsenal winning the double behind me, but this time it had my company logo. And somebody pointed out to me after 10 minutes, I'd got it back to front. So I'm glad that I didn't try that this time. But thank you both for your time. Really good to catch up with you both today.
See you
Thank you
later.
very much.
Cheers. Thank you.